Evening, Barbara.
Hello, Jackie.
This is a joy to speak to you. Oh my goodness. I must admit, this dear, lovely lady got in touch with me that you obviously know, Iben.
Even, yes, a Danish
Iben.
woman, yes, here in
Yeah,
Copenhagen.
and said you really would need to, you need to speak with Barbara Berger. Well, I'm so pleased you did. I've been reading a book of yours,
Mm.
Barbara.
Yes, the awakening human being.
Oh my goodness, it's so clear and it for children anyway. Before we say that, Barbara lives in Copenhagen.
Mm.
um yeah, but in originally from America.
Yes.
I've been watching a video of yours today, so your story is quite incredible, what you've been through, and
Mm.
now how many people you help
Mm.
with trauma. So many. Well, it's just going to be a fascinating talk. Would you like to just say a little bit about,
Well,
because the amount
actually,
of books that you've
I've
written?
written all these books, as you know. People can go in on my website if they would like to see the books and other interviews. My website is Beam Team, BEAMTEAM.com, because we're here to beam you up, right? That's how we go.
Nice, nice. Yes.
But anyway, so yes, I was born in America and fled from America because of the Vietnam War, actually. My father was a top military man in the Pentagon, and when I was a young woman, I fell in love with a guy who got drafted. And so that was the beginning of a long adventure. We were against the war, and that was at the beginning of the Vietnam War. So there wasn't this huge protest movement that came later. So we fled. I mean, at that time, you couldn't be a conscientious objector. There was the draft in America, and if you didn't go, you went 5 years to jail.
Oh,
So we fled, and it wasn't very popular in my family since my father was working in the Pentagon and was a top military man. And so we were underground fleeing for 1.5 years, actually. And one of the places that you're from Southampton. One of the
yes,
places that,
Southampton.
yes, we had sailed from New York City on a boat to Southampton. And when we
Oh,
arrived,
really?
and when we arrived, they wouldn't allow us off the boat. Everybody else got off the boat except Steve and I. And we didn't know what was going on. It was a boat filled with young people. I mean, we weren't the only hippies. The whole boat was filled with young people who were
Wow.
going to Europe from America. For some reason, they held us back and they refused to let us land. And then we were locked up in this boat for 3 days and 3 nights in Southampton Harbor.
No.
And the only person who was left on the boat was the captain. And he felt really sorry for us. So he invited us to eat dinner with him every night. And so
Oh,
he was very jolly, the captain. So we were prisoners on this boat in Southampton for 3 days and 3 nights. And then after 3 days, the police came and took us off the boat. And they put us in handcuffs. And they said they were sending us back to America. But we had to go with the police. There was a woman for me who I was with, and there was a guy for him. And they drove us in a car to London to go to Heathrow, but we were way, way too early for this airplane. And then we said, I think the police, they felt really sorry for us because they thought, what's with these two? Why are they being deported? And then I said, I've never been to London. And then they said, okay, dear, we'll do some sightseeing. So the police drove us around in London and showed us all the sights. And then they drove us to Heathrow and they gave our passport, they unlocked us and gave our passports to the captains and they don't let them off until they're in New York. And so, because the plane flew to Scotland and to Iceland and to different places before it came back to America. So, but
wow.
anyway,
So you did go back.
we had to, we were prisoners. So I have actually tried to being deported from the UK. I've been there many times now, but that was one of my first trips to the UK. It was not so pleasant.
Oh, I say. Because you do talks all over the world, or you have done.
Yes, I've been to
Amazing.
London many times since, and one of my children lives in Windsor, so I've been there many times. So, but anyway,
Oh,
Southampton has a special place in my memory.
but that was pretty traumatic, wasn't it? I mean, is that how you, with those experiences, because I know there was an awful lot at that time, experiences with illness and going to different countries and still being undercover, or yeah.
Yeah, I've written a
Um,
book about it that's going to be coming out soon. My Road to Power. It'll be out soon, so you can read about it on the website. But after that, then we were underground. We went to Canada. We ended up, after 1.5 years of trying to stay away from the army, we ran out of places, and so we ended up going to Mexico. That was the last place, and so we hitchhiked from New York City to Mexico City. That's quite a long way. And
wow.
we ended up in Mexico City after many weeks with only $150. And we didn't speak Spanish. We didn't know anyone. And I mean, I was only 20 years old then. So we were really
Wow.
scared. And so the very first day when we came to Mexico City. We were wandering around. We didn't know what to do, where to go. And so we ended up sitting on a bench in a park in the middle of the city, just sort of staring out. And I mean, we were really I was really traumatized by then anyway.
Yeah.
And so,
Yeah.
but then there was this guy. There was a man, a very tall man. He was sort of walking around the park, and he had a very big sort of like a drawing block, and he was going around sketching people. And then he came over to us and he said, "Oh, you have such beautiful faces. Can I sketch? Can I draw you?" And we said, "Sure, go ahead." And so he sat down on the ground, on the grass in front of the bench, and he started drawing. And then suddenly he stopped and he put the paper down and he said, "What are you doing here?" And up until that moment, all the places we had been, we never told anyone that we were running away from the army. We always said, we're students, or we're traveling, or we never told the truth.
Mm-hmm.
But for some reason, it was me actually. I just sort of blurted it all out and said, we're running away from the US Army and we're afraid and we don't have any money and we're scared and we just got here and we don't know what to do. I just sort of, and then this guy, he said, he was quiet. And then he said, "I'm a pacifist and I'm from Sweden and I think you're doing the right thing. So you can go home with me and I'll take care of you." And he did. And it turned out he was a very famous Swedish artist. And his brother was a very famous journalist at Sweden's largest newspaper. And so they took us back to Sweden and we got political asylum and we were refugees and we became sort of stars suddenly. I mean, I wrote a book about it, and because Sweden was a neutral country then and they were very against the Vietnam War. And so we became sort of like heroes. And so it was all just sort of, and then I wrote a book about it. So anyway, so that's how I got to Scandinavia, from Mexico, from Southampton
Incredible. Incredible. And really, that's been your base ever since.
Mm, yeah. So
I
now
mean, it's just a
I have
fascinating.
this is my office, as you can see, and here I work every day as a coach and a therapist. So I have a lot of people coming here all the time, and we do stuff.
Oh, how wonderful. Because where you live is one of the places that's sort of the happiest in the world, isn't it?
That's what they say.
Would you agree with that?
Well, I would say that the Scandinavian sort of social model, the welfare societies, I mean, they are very. I remember when I first came here from the United States, I was so shocked at how free, liberal, peaceful So comparatively speaking, I would say Scandinavia is, I mean, there's gender equality, sexual equality. I mean, it's a very liberal minded place. So if that's the
So
definition of happiness, I guess so.
what's the last 3 years been like there, though? Like, has it impacted mental health the same as it seems to have in a lot of places?
Yeah, you mean the COVID lockdown? Yeah,
Yeah,
definitely.
yeah,
Yeah. I mean, I did even I do sessions all the time in person, but I also do on Zoom every day, people who don't live in Copenhagen. But then I just had during lockdown, I just had nonstop, one after the other. I mean, people were really struggling.
yeah.
And especially the young people who, I mean, that's the time of their life where they're supposed to be out and about and socialize. So yes, it's true. It's really been.
And I mean, every one of your books seems to be about how the mind works and how, you know, what we go to school and we're indoctrinated with. What you're talking about is understanding how the mind works, but in such a
Exactly.
simplistic way. You
Mhm.
explain it so well.
So many
Um,
people have actually said about this book that you're talking about, The Awakening Human Being,
Absolutely, yeah.
the beginning, the mental laws. Everyone who comes here says, why don't we teach this in school? Why don't we tell our children this? And
Yes,
and I say I totally agree. That's why I write these books. I'm trying to spread this information, because the key to freedom and to happiness, as you were talking about, is to understand how our minds work. And I mean, we go to school and we learn all kinds of stuff. We learn to read, to write, mathematics, chemistry, all that stuff, but we don't learn this basic skill of understanding the nature of mind and consciousness. And so we're victims of mechanisms which are very simple, but since nobody ever pointed them out to us, we're not in control of this stuff. And so
yeah,
when
absolutely.
people
And what we are taught, much of, like, we aren't taught really financial that would help us out in the world.
that's true.
Um, yeah, relationships,
Mhm,
self-love,
mhm.
all of those sort of things that would be so helpful to really understand. I
Well,
was,
I saw I've just have another book that's actually just coming out in the UK about relationships. That's the latest one. This one, I don't know if I sent that to you, did I?
no, you didn't, no, but that looks a really good one to get. The
Yeah,
basic principles behind a good relationship. How wonderful.
mhm.
I mean, seriously, I just know from reading that one, The Awakening Human Being, how clear that will be to help
Mhm.
people with
Well, this is actually coming out in the UK on the 26th, so 2 days from today. It's
Oh, amazing.
yeah,
And is it the relationship with yourself as well? Is that covered in there?
it's definitely.
Partner, family, parents, colleagues, yeah. Because I'm doing a happiness and Ho'oponopono course at the minute.
Okay.
And the week we talked about relationships. I
Mhm.
asked them to write down the 5 closest relationships with them, and
Mhm.
then said how many put themselves on that list,
Mhm.
because that is the one that's the most,
That's
hard to.
the number one is yourself.
Yes,
The one
yes,
person that you are always together with, that never will leave you and that you will never leave, is you. And it's really
perfect.
important to understand that your relationship to you and your mind and your consciousness, I mean, that is everything is a subjective experience. We're all programmed with all kinds of beliefs from the moment we're born. And then we have all this programming going on. And so we're each person is in their own, you could say, mental, psychological bubble. And so
Absolutely.
the same situation, the same relationships, the same outer experiences, the same outer events, people experience them completely differently.
Yes,
And that's because of the programming, because of the belief systems that we have. We're different in that way. We're not all the same. And so it's really important to understand the mechanism of mind if you want to be able to step back and observe what you're doing and find out, are these beliefs, do they have anything to do with reality? Are they appropriate? Do they support me in living a happy life? Or so starting to understand this, how it works, is the most amazing journey.
It's such an amazing, so much to take in about the mind, isn't it? Like how much training or whatever you've had or gone through, or interest with. Did you do Buddhism? And
I've studied it a lot, but again, I have been on this pathway my whole life, of course, with all of these, all of these things that have happened to me. But actually, if we should go back a bit into the story of how I discovered this, I think that might be interesting.
Yeah, definitely.
It was in the 90s anyway. And I was a single mother. I have 3 children and I had to make money and I was working really hard and so on. And I had been studying all of this, but I hadn't really written any books about it yet. And then there was a time that I decided, I had to take a break. I was so stressed and I told everybody I was going away, but I didn't go away. I just took my bike and went to the woods at the north of Copenhagen and meditated and prayed and walked alone. And so I had 3 weeks of silent retreat with myself. And then on the very last day, I went to the beach and the sun was going down and there was no one there. And it was very quiet. And I was sitting there and I was very blissful. I had been meditating. And then suddenly I heard a voice. And a voice said to me, "Barbara, you're going to write a book. So take out your pencil and paper." And I was like, I mean, I've heard of things like that, but it never happened to me before. And so I took out my pencil and paper, and then the voice dictated to me. It said, the name of the book is The Road to Power. And then it said chapter 1, and it told me the title of chapter 1 and what was going to be in it. And then chapter 2, and then chapter 3. And it dictated the whole book to me.
No.
And then the voice said, "Now go home and write it." And I was like, oh my God. And so I did go home and I did write it. It was actually really easy to write. It was as if the book was writing itself through me. And then when the book was finished, I already at that time was a well-known writer and had publishers in different countries, but nobody would publish the book. It was rejected by everybody. And they said that it was too simplistic. They didn't like it. And what was this for nonsense and blah, blah, blah. And so then I decided, because the message was so powerful, I decided, okay, if nobody wants to publish it, I'll publish it myself. And if nobody wants to buy it, I'll give them away. So we published 1,000 copies, and it's kind of a long story, but here in Denmark, I had to have it translated to Danish. And one of the women who I was helping was a very famous writer who was well known in the country. And sort of the synchronicity of the universe was that when I got the 1,000 books, she wrote a full-page article in Denmark's biggest newspaper about how this fantastic book was and how it had helped her. She was in hospital and so on. And so it became a bestseller, this book that nobody wanted.
Love it. And
so then, and now we're coming to the mental laws that you have. So then this book became more and more popular. It's called, this book, it's called.
Oh, I got that one. Yes.
Mm-hmm. So this is the book that was dictated to me and became, since everybody rejected it, it became, and then I published it myself. It has had so many versions in so many languages, but it is really published in 30 languages now.
I'm just going to shut the door, sorry. Sorry, I don't know what the dog's barking at, but there's people down there with them. So it's fine.
Okay. But
Well, that's
anyway,
a really lovely story. Yeah.
so now this book has been translated to 30 different languages. So it's in 30 different countries. This book is, and I hear from people all over the world. They write to me and tell me that this book changed their lives.
Love it. I see on the back you've got Neil Donald Walsh
Mhm.
saying a bit about it.
Yeah, that's
How did
great.
that happen?
Well, says one of the publishers gave it to him in America, and he thought this is a great book, so he decided that he would promote it. And you know who Neil Donald Walsh is, right?
I got a picture here with him somewhere. Yeah. It's always sort of,
He wrote Conversations with God.
he did, absolutely. Oh, well, it usually is to hand. I'll try and find it in a minute. But anyway, and then the next one, that magical blend, it said captivating. Pick up this book and start in any chapter. So I thought I'll just open and see what the, and I opened it at chapter 6, the power of right seeing. A great way to raise your energy. And that's what we're talking about so much now, how we need to raise our energy. So yeah, a great way to raise your energy, increase your power, and improve your life is to practice what I call right seeing. By right seeing, I mean focusing your attention on the good that is already present in all people and all situations. I mean, what a great, just to open it, they always say, open a book at yes. Open a book anywhere and it's got a message for you.
I actually write that in the introduction to do exactly as you said. Open the book anywhere and it will have the message that you need. Because it's all about the power of the mind. This is the first one I wrote about that. The power of your focus. So the power of right seeing. In other words, in every now moment, we always have a choice. Are we going to focus on everything that's negative about a situation or a person? Everything we don't like, all the problems? I mean, that's a low frequency, low energy. Or are we going to the same exact situation? We have a choice. We can also focus on the good, the positive. What can I learn here? What is the potential? See the good in the person or see the good in the situation. And that's a really high frequency. And so your choice determines your frequency, the vibrational frequency that you have, that you send out into the universe. And as you know, because of law of attraction, we attract people, situations, circumstances that match our frequency. So this choice that we have in every now moment of how we are going to use our attention, that is what determines our life, our circumstances, what we experience, but also it determines our influence on other people. People who have good energy are more powerful. The higher frequencies are more powerful than the lower frequencies. And so all of this, the spiritual teachings are about how do we raise our frequency. So
can I just ask you, Barbara, it's really good, like having the high thoughts, high vibrational thoughts, the best in everything and everyone. So do we, to move forward, do we have to look at our shadow side?
We're forced to, I would say. We don't have a choice. But it's more about, okay, so how do we hold this information? In other words, there's a reason, there's a meaning. What is the lesson here? So again, instead of moaning and groaning about whatever it is, we have to be present, to be spacious enough to allow this energy since we've already got it, it's a part of us, to be with it and to let it there's a chapter in here also about releasing. In other words, when this kind of energy comes up, there's no healing without feeling. So you have to allow yourself to be with it, but not to hold on to it, to also let it dissipate. So that would be a lot of people who come to me for therapy and coaching, they have problems. That's the reason they come. The people who come are not always that happy. They don't come to me because they're happy. They come to me because they're confronted either in their relationship or in their job or with their children or with the dark side, you would say, or with problems that they don't know how to deal with bad energy, with lack of respect, with lack of healthy boundaries. So there's a lot going on in our interpersonal relationships that triggers all of this all the time. So there's a lot.
Oh yeah, and if you're in grief and despair, or you know, that lower energy, you can't shoot up to joy and bliss.
No.
So it is a process that you have to go through. And I love
Definitely.
what you're saying about, you know, who thinks the thought, like the thoughts come and go, and you're the thinker of the thought. But so what's your main, you know, to help people up? So just earlier I was on Facebook, because I promoted this and I promoted something else. Or, you know, I was just saying about it. And then you get sidetracked, so you might, and you're just all over the place, like, you know. And then I had to literally remember, what did I come on here to do? And I would like to be more focused.
I call that popcorn brain, right?
Yeah.
Well, the thing is, if you understand, again, so if we go back to just to tell you from this book, then there came the questions about how come all the techniques in this book are so effective. And I was on this big national radio show where people were asking me that. And then I again came with this explanation, which is the mental laws, which I said we should talk about tonight.
Yes.
So,
yes.
So this came first, but then there came the reason why these techniques that I write about are so effective. And that's based on understanding how the way that consciousness and the mind works. And if you looked a bit at the mental laws, which I think you did, the nature of consciousness is that thoughts arise and disappear automatically. It's true for all of us. It's nothing to do with, you know, people who meditate or try to meditate, they think, oh my God, I have all these thoughts. I shouldn't have all these thoughts. So I start the mental laws with the first law. If we observe the nature of consciousness, that's thoughts arise and disappear by themselves. I say to people, take a chair and sit and look at a white wall and tell yourself, I'm not going to think for the next 5 minutes. You can't do it. Not possible.
No.
Thoughts arise and disappear. So that's the first thing. But then the next thing to understand is, I say that's the second law, the law of witnessing. That go back to the chair and look at the white wall and say you're not going to think, and then notice the thoughts that arise. And okay, I forgot to buy milk in the supermarket. Oh, I have a sore throat today. Oh, I should have called my girl. All that stuff. They arise and disappear, but you're still here. In other words, you can observe the thoughts arising and disappearing. And this is a major spiritual breakthrough to have this understanding. Most people are so identified with the thinking, with their thoughts, that they think that that's who they are. But waking up to the nature of consciousness is this shift to be able to see, okay, thoughts arise and disappear, but I'm still here. So who am I? And so we find out that we're not our thoughts, that we are the field of consciousness in which thoughts arise and disappear. And this is where our power lies, because we can then begin to observe our thinking. And then there comes all these techniques about, you know, what am I thinking? Is this the highest and best thought for this situation? All of these other laws are based on the ability to step back and actually observe. So you just said to me, you go on Facebook and then you do, and so, but you're able to watch yourself and do that.
Yeah.
And so that's the higher people with higher levels of consciousness, they have this ability. People on a lower level, again, and it's not a judgment, it's just an observation, are so identified with their thinking. They haven't yet learned that they can step back and observe it. And so therefore, their thinking, they're so attached to their thoughts that runs their lives. So they don't have power over the situations that they're in. So that's why this is called the road to power. It's to take the power back and to understand these mechanisms of mind because then you can choose more wisely and you can begin to control your destiny and move in the direction, again, as you said before, we can't make too big leaps, but move in the direction that we would like to go in, little by little.
So go a bit more of your story that I heard earlier that I found absolutely fascinating was the fact that you went to that embassy. Was it in Iran?
No, that was in Afghanistan. Okay.
Afghanistan. Could you tell that story and the fact, and then, well, I'll ask you the question after you've told. Do you mind telling that?
No. I said when I was when I was younger, when I first came, so in the 60s, it was about, you know, I mean, I always had this Satchidananda, higher consciousness. I knew about these things from the beginning. I didn't know about the great spiritual traditions when I was young, but I knew about this, and I had some really powerful experiences. And so seeking higher consciousness has always sort of been the driving force. And one of the things that I did when I was young is we went to go to the East, to go to India, to meditate, all of that. And that was in the 60s, and that was in 1969. And so we were on our way to India, but I got very, very ill in Afghanistan. Afghanistan is just the most unbelievable place on the planet. It's just, I mean, talk about the dark ages. The situation that has happened now in Afghanistan, the way they treat women, it's back to the dark ages again. I mean, it's just,
Yeah.
But anyway, so I was very, very ill and I thought I was going to die. There was no medicine. It was so unclean. It was just, and so I decided that in desperation that I would go to the American embassy and see if I could get help. I mean, I thought that that was what the embassies were for.
Yeah.
And so I went to the American embassy, which was outside Kabul, the capital. Sort of, I mean, the whole country is like this desert. But anyway, it was this fortress in the middle of nowhere. And I had gotten some kind of taxi to drive me somehow or other. And then I went up and there was this big gate and I knocked on the door. And then eventually a guard came and opened the gate or opened the door and said, "What do you want?" And I said, "I'm an American citizen. I think I'm dying. I need help. Please help me." And he said, we don't help hippies," and slammed the door. And so then I didn't know what to do. And so in desperation, and I didn't have very good relationships with my family because of all of these things, but I called my father. That was also really difficult to make a phone call to the United States from Kabul in those days. So that was a whole thing. And we didn't have money, so I had to make a collect call. But I called my father and I said, "I think I'm really ill and I don't know what to do. And I'm afraid I'm going to die." And he listened and then he said, "Okay, wait 24 hours and then go back to the embassy." And so I did. I waited. And then after 24 hours, I went back to the embassy and I knocked on the door again, and another guard opened the door. And then he said, "What's your name?" And then I said, "Barbara Berger." And then he said, "Oh, come in." And then I went in and I thought, oh my God. And then these people, they came and they said, and they were so nice to me all of a sudden. And they said, "We don't know who your father is, but we got a top priority telegram from the State Department to take care of you." And so then they took me in and it was like little America in this fortress, they had a hospital and they were so nice and clean beds and medicine and food. And so I stayed there for a while and they nursed me back to sort of health so that I could go back to Europe. But so I couldn't go on to India. I was I didn't weigh very much. I was nearly gone. So that was quite an interesting experience. So what was it that you wanted to ask?
So what I wanted to ask, did you get any sort of relationship back with your parents or your dad after that? Or because of that?
You will get to read about it in my new book because it's complicated.
Oh, okay.
It's complicated.
Oh, okay.
Part of the problem in my background is it was my mother who was really the one who was so dysfunctional. And it was my father who, even though he was a military man, he was the passive one in their relationship. So he never protected me or took, so it's complicated. It's a complicated story.
Oh, okay. Oh,
And
okay.
but it didn't end well. No.
And do you think that was a soul contract that you had because that's got you where you are today? Do you believe in soul
Absolutely.
contracts? Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, it's just like you think, why? But I mean, it all makes sense, as you say, that all of these different things that lead you to your purpose, you
Yeah.
could say.
Push you forward, even
Yeah.
though it might seem the worst time of your life, it could be
Well,
why it's happening for me, not to me.
it's like that when your karma becomes your dharma, that these things that happen to you, that they become your, in other words, you take it as the sort of, as you say, it's part of your process to do what this soul wants you to do. So I always try to listen to that. I mean, to be in alignment as much as, I mean, I don't know if I sent you that book. I have written a book also called Your Find and Follow Your Inner Compass. I don't know if you
And I've
have that.
got the spiritual pathway.
Mhm.
Oh yeah, yeah. Find and follow your inner
Yeah.
compass.
That book is a lot about what you're asking me now too. This about being in alignment with your soul purpose, and
Yes.
it's just so. I mean, I would say today it's really problematic also because of social media, and people are so they're not tuned in very much to this. They're tuned into everybody else and what everybody else thinks, and they've lost contact with what I call the inner compass, and that's what we're talking about now, this soul alignment.
And you know, I don't know what your thoughts are, but about the new earth, we're going towards the new era, the golden era. Do you
Mm.
believe that I think your son writes about that, Tim
Mhm.
Ray,
Mhm.
in
Mhm.
A Spiritual Adventure.
Yeah, I have to get that. Just hold on a second.
Because the first page I opened on that was about the Glastonbury being the heart chakra of the,
Mhm.
yes,
Mhm.
being the heart chakra of the
Yeah,
world.
you can see the picture of Glastonbury there.
Beautiful. Yeah. And the first page I opened, he's talking, in this book about the heart chakra of the world.
Yeah, yeah. I've been there. We have been there many times meditating.
Oh, happy. I'm there on Saturday. I'm going on Saturday because they got a fairy festival.
It's a lovely place, a lovely place.
I love it. Love it.
Mm.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Oh my,
yes, these books that my son wrote, and I actually have translated them to English, so I'm an expert in these books. They are all about ascension, higher dimensions, the PowerPoints, all of these chakra meditations, all the things that you're talking about. So I think you will love these books.
absolutely. Is that the one that lives in Windsor?
No, we work together. He's to get us. If you go on the website, his name is Tim Ray. We are
Brilliant.
business partners doing this business together.
Oh, you couldn't wish for better, could you?
No, it's really a privilege to be able to work with your own son. So
Oh, absolutely. Oh, so um I heard you talk about Byron Katie because I brought Byron Katie up in the last week's talk. It's a 6-week course I'm doing on this happiness and Ho'oponopono. And
yeah,
yeah, love her work as well.
he's fantastic. I mean, there's quite a bit in the book that we were talking about the work of Byron Katie in this book, The Awakening Human Being. You
Ah,
probably haven't gotten that far, but in one of the, but it's a fantastic technique to check into reality. I think to question your thinking.
absolutely. But quite simplistic, really, when you look at it. Um, Forgiveness is sort of what she works with. I mean, I don't know if you've actually got any thoughts on forgiveness that you'd like to share.
Well, before we do that, I would like to say, I think that before we can go to forgiveness, when people come to me for coaching, I always say to them that the basic observation that is sort of the platform for all the work that I do with people is the observation that there is something that I would call it reality. And by reality, I mean the things that are happening in your life, the people that you meet, the situation, the circumstances, I call that reality. But then you and me and everyone else, you have your thoughts about what's going on. In other words, something happens and then you have your interpretation of what this means to you. And it's not so much what happens as what you think it means to you that determines your experience. But this is a really, really, before we go to Byron Katie, but this is a really, really important observation and understanding to have, because most people still today, they think, you know, something happened out there and that's why I'm happy. Something happened out there and that's why I'm sad. They haven't discovered yet that there's a middle place, and that is your interpretation. In other words, how you relate to what's going on. And if you, and I always say to people, don't believe me, look, observe yourself until you can see that this is true. And one of the ways you can see this is that if you have something that happens, an event, and then you have 10 different people present at this event, in principle, you could have 10 different experiences of the same event. In other words, one person thinks it's great. In other words, the person thinks it's boring. Another person thinks it's tragic. So our belief systems, our thinking, that determines how we experience stuff. And this is where the work of Byron Katie comes in, and forgiveness also comes in, because when we start looking at our stories, we often find out that what we think was going on didn't happen at all.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just mind-blowing.
I absolutely love it. I went to London to see her. And how she turned it around on stage live in front of us.
Exactly.
For, you know, the questions that come up and how she just turned it, just incredible. Yeah, love it. But forgiveness, sorry.
But that's why you can say forgiveness is also relative, because what is our judgment of the situation based on?
Yes. There's so much about forgiveness, because I went to see, no, I've read a book of Neil Donald Walsh's, The Only Thing That Matters. And the only thing that matters when you get to it is nothing. So I've ruined the book for everyone. But anyway, you open the page when he says, so really the only thing that matters, and you turn the page and it's blank. Nothing really matters. And so forgiveness, there is never anything to forgive, he says.
That's exactly what I was driving at. So it's all in our mental assessment of stuff. The Course in Miracles is about that too. I mean, the whole thing is, what's there to forgive, actually? So it's so clearing up this here and being present in the now moment. It's just
sorry. With unforgiveness, if there's no forgiveness within you, who's it hurting? That's the So it's such a huge subject, and it's so worth looking into.
Definitely. But I mean, again,
just to understand
it seems to me that because I talk to people every day, people are so unkind to themselves.
Yes.
I mean, it's just horrible. The judgment this way, the lack of love, the lack of kindness, the lack of forgiveness, the whole idea, it's such an unrealistic, people have such unrealistic expectations to the human condition. And forgiveness, kindness, love, whatever word you want to use on it, is being realistic about how difficult it is to be a human being, and that no one is perfect. We all have our strengths and weaknesses, and we all fumble and bumble around, and we learn a little bit, and life is a journey and a learning, but people are just so hard on themselves. So that's one of the things that I really work a lot with people about, this condemnation this way.
Absolutely. You wouldn't speak to you wouldn't speak to anyone the way you speak to yourself at times, when you can criticize yourself so easily.
Yeah.
And like, even knowing what we know, or definitely what you know, you can still find yourself probably at times.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
But the more self-awareness you have,
Yes.
that's what it's about. And you could say that's where Byron Katie's 4 questions are so brilliant. They are a practical tool that help us stop this crazy machine that's and take one thought at a time and look at it and deconstruct it, and the freedom that comes from that, the relief that comes from that, is just such a blessing. So yes.
We're sort of going to keep this to about 45, 50 minutes today, Barbara, but would you come back and we can carry on, because we got so much we could talk about.
Okay, well, I'd like to end by saying that I have this free ebook that I'm giving away. It's called The Mental Laws, and it's the first part of this book, and it's these mechanisms, the way the mind works that we have been talking about, which this information is so valuable, and so many people have told me that understanding the mental laws has really, really changed their lives. So if you would like to have the free ebook, go into beamteam.com. You will see how to do it. You just have to send an email to info@beamteam.com, and then all you have to do is write in the subject line the mental laws, and then we'll send you the book within 24 hours.
Incredible.
Because I really like to share this information with everyone. I really would. It's so life-changing.
Well, just to do the first, I mean, I'm further than that, but just the first chapter, and I'm not, pushing this book really, but I am absolutely so taken with it. It's so, and if we read that, and then if we were teaching our children that from a very young age, the interest in, and how do they learn? Are they, touchy feely, or are they mentally, physically? Yeah. So really understand the children as well.
Children understand this. I have quite a few that bring their children to me, but children understand this stuff much quicker than adults.
Absolutely.
Because it's just so simple and so obvious.
Yeah.
And it's the main thing, the takeaway is what you focus your attention on grows in your experience. That is the fundamental mental law. Once you understand that, what you focus your attention on, that's what you give your energy to. That grows in your experience. That determines your vibrational frequency. So the power is in us, but we just don't use it because we don't understand it. And so that's what this mental laws tries to teach, this book. It tries to explain. So if you would like to have a look at it, it would be my pleasure to share it.
Bless you. Thank you so much. And I'll just go back to that, that page that I opened up on that book.
Yes.
The Road to Power.
Yes.
A great way to, because that tells you the right thing, focus your attention on the good of all people.
Exactly.
Find the good in everyone, because you're actually, if you're finding the good in someone else, you're finding it in yourself.
You are very wise, lady. Thank you so much for having me, Jackie. And
honestly, Barbara, I would love to speak with you again soon.
So we'll meet again. I'm sure we will. And keep up the good work. You're a blessing, and I can see that you're doing so many good things. So thank you for having me, and keep it up, my dear. And have a
Thank
good time in Glastonbury.
Yes, yeah, the fairy festival.
I love
Thank
it.
you so much, Barbara. And
Yeah.
anyone that's watching, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, bye.